Take it away, Karen.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our fall 2021 course preview. And we appreciate you joining us. I can see that we have many longtime members with us today, but do we have anybody new? Because we'd like to maybe say hello to you. Okay, hopefully maybe you can share this. That's one of the reasons for recording it, is that we could put this up so other people who couldn't attend today will be able to look at the preview. I find that the previews personally are very wonderful because I get the list of courses, I pick out some that I say, oh, I want those. And then I listen to the previews and I go, oh, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. So they're the important part. And that's why we're going to quickly get into the previews from our course leaders for the fall. Now I'm going to toss it over to Joan DuPont. She's our chair of council.
Yep. And real quickly, when we started out in June, when we put this term together, we were very optimistic that we'd be in person, and we had course leaders we reached out to who were enthusiastic, but unfortunately COVID kind of had other plans for us. And council at its meeting last Wednesday reluctantly decided that we really needed to go all to Zoom. So here we are, all on Zoom. Hopefully we will get back into the building all together at some point in the future. Thank you.
Okay, just a brief summary. That is a learning community. It's a very relaxed, informal classroom atmosphere. The people are wonderful, and I think many people might think, oh, it's classes, it's affiliated with RIT, and that it's pretentious and you need to be a genius. Not at all. It's wonderful. The people are down to earth. Some are extremely intelligent, and then there's people like me who, I'm okay. So, I mean, it's a run. Everyone feels welcome and everyone is welcome. You just have to learn if you want, and there's so much more than learning. We have a lot of social. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after the presentations. For our courses, you can take as many as you'd like for one price, which is much different than other Oshers and certainly other places like Oasis, where you pay $75 for one class. So we have 41 this term. They vary in length from 1 to 10 weeks, run usually from an hour and a half to 2 hours. There's 3 class periods per day, and there's this secure interactive online classrooms via Zoom. Now, the other thing that I should mention here is that many of our courses are recorded, so you don't have to be able to attend at that time in order to take advantage of courses you're interested in.
Karen, at this point, I'm going to mute everyone because there's a lot of background noise, and then you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can.
Okay, great. The next slide. This is a list of our course previews for today in the order that they'll be presented. And as you can see, we've got some varied and exciting courses coming up and some wonderful people teaching them. So, I won't belabor this because each one will be talking individually. So if we can go to John Janicki and Jane Eccleston's course. Hey, John.
Hey, welcome, everybody. Thanks, Karen. So as at least some of you probably know, a group of people from Osher, I think it's 16 of us, are going to the Galapagos in early 2022, assuming the pandemic allows us to. So Jane Eggleston and I thought it would be worthwhile to present some background information on the Galapagos, even though neither of us has ever been there. So this may be of interest to people who are going on the trip, people who've been there before, or just people who are thinking about going someday. So when it was first discovered, the Galapagos were considered go back to the initial slide. When they were first discovered, the Galapagos were considered a wasteland. And so they were first discovered, it was 1535, I think. And it was almost 300 years before anyone took the Galapagos seriously as a place to live. So they were just like considered a barren wasteland. However, in 1835, Charles Darwin landed there. If we go to the next slide. So Darwin landed there in 1835, spent 5 weeks in the Galapagos and discovered something incredible. So he basically, if you've ever read the Voyage of the Beagle, there's so many nuggets in there pointing to the origin of species. So you can really see how his thoughts came together during the Voyage of the Beagle, and in particular in the Galapagos. So he later, in his autobiography, later in life, said that the Galapagos is where it all started. And so in this course, what we're going to do is, let me see, what is our next slide? Okay, so the first class is going to be on Darwin, the life of Darwin, the Voyage of the Beagle, and the influence on his subsequent work. Next class will be, Jane and I will split the next one. Jane will talk about geological history of the Galapagos. This is the physical setting. And I'll be talking about climate and ocean currents. And so this sort of sets the stage for the biological wonders of the Galapagos. In this particular slide, El Nino is mislabeled. It should be on the left-hand side. But we'll talk about how the climate of the Galapagos, its discovery actually, the source of colonists, they all seem to be related to atmospheric circulation patterns and the ocean currents that they drive. So we'll spend some time on that. Let's see, next slide. So after talking about the physical setting, then we'll go to the biological setting. We'll start off focusing on the vegetation, the different habitat types, which are arrayed sort of in a I don't know, stack-like manner from low to high elevations, going from very arid lowlands to a moist zone, sort of at intermediate elevations, and then again a dry zone at the very highest elevations, as it's actually above the clouds. Next, so after we talk about vegetation, we will then discuss not all, but various animals. The Galapagos is like a wonderland of incredibly interesting and bizarre creatures. There's a penguin that lives on the equator, essentially. There's flightless cormorant, giant tortoises that can live for a couple hundred years. The only marine lizard in the world, the marine iguana, flamingos, fur seals, sea lions, variety of birds. And among the birds, of course, are Darwin's finches, probably the drabbest of all, but evolutionarily extremely important. Next class, we'll talk about the history of the Galapagos from its discovery, and let's say whaling, pirates, and the Voyage of the Beagle. And next, we will talk about the connection between the economy of the Galapagos, tourism, and conservation. These are all intricately connected to each other. The Galapagos is sort of a wonderland of conservation, but it's also a wonderland of threats to the islands. So there's a Chinese fishing fleet below. There's goats, which are invasive. There's quite a number of invasive species that are a serious challenge, but they have remarkable conservation programs going on there. And then finally, the highlight of the course will be that Peter and Rosemary Grant are going to drop in to our final class and present something. I said they could present anything they wanted, either their recent research, and they're still publishing, or how they got interested in the Galapagos, anything they want. And so that'll be an absolute delight. They were the subject of the Pulitzer Prize winning book called The Beak of the Finch. So if nothing else, that will be a real highlight of this course, having them with us for a bit. Okay, that's it, Karen. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John. Are you going to put in a picture of your pirating days when you cover pirates? That would be funny. We'll dress you up for Halloween.
Okay.
All right. The next one we're going to cover is from Richard Mallory. He's talking about the British are coming. So Richard, I'll turn over to you.
Good morning. I see that the slide that I turned in has been much improved. I've been an Osher member since 2012, and I've done 22 previous courses here. And I'm going to tell you about the class I'm doing in the fall, which is, as you see, the British are coming. And it deals with the background of the American Revolution and the first year and a half of the war. American history is one of my areas of particular interest. I don't have any training in the field, so I bring a perspective to the class that I lead where I try to ask and answer questions that others might take for granted. For example, it seems to me that most Americans believe the revolution was inevitable. You know, we like to think of ourselves as being an exceptional people who could not long tolerate being colonial subjects. So, of course, to this way of thinking, it was only a matter of time before we declared independence. But it turns out the revolution was not at all inevitable. The colonists of British North America had fought several wars alongside regular British Army units over a period of about 90 years, most recently in the 7 Years' War. This was a worldwide conflict that Americans usually call the French and Indian War, after the two groups, the Americans and the British, were fighting against. After the British victory in 1763, American colonists almost all thought of themselves as proud British subjects. Yet, just 12 years later, in 1775, the Revolutionary War broke out. In this class, I investigate what happened in that interval. What happened in those 12 years to turn loyal British patriots into rebel revolutionaries? And the next question I ask is, how did the revolution succeed? That's the next slide. The British had a large, well-trained professional army with an elite officer corps, supplemented by German mercenaries, the famous Hessians, all of whom had considerable recent battle experience. And the Americans had small community-based militias with few trained officers, and moreover, they had inadequate supplies of weapons, ammunition, and gunpowder. In short, we were completely outmanned, outgunned, and outclassed. And so the second thing I look at is how George Washington managed to create an army that in early battles barely managed to avoid being annihilated, and somehow succeeded in achieving some important victories at Trenton and Princeton by the end of 1776. So that by this point, the British would realize the war was not going to be the quick and easy walkover they originally believed, and that American diplomats in Paris were able to persuade the French king to offer us assistance. And that's what I'm going to be doing.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Our next one is going to be a presentation by Gary Mitchell on Express Yourself Through Fiction Writing. Gary?
Yes, hello, everybody. Express Yourself Through Fiction Writing is one of Osher's longest running courses. It's been held for over 20 years, so there must be something to it. If you were to go on Amazon, I did this just before this class started, and type in how to write, the message you will get is that there are over 50,000 titles available under this topic. So you could probably spend the rest of your life reading books on how to write, or you could take this course and learn to write. And that's what we're all about. We're a small class. We typically limit ourselves to about 14 people, but there's always a couple of seats open every class. So if you're thinking about taking this course, don't let that limitation stand in your way, because you have a real strong chance of getting in. The goal is for everyone to write and read their short story every week. Now, that might sound a little frightening to some people, but it turns out it's actually not. We use a model based on flash fiction. So the story that you write, typically we recommend about 800 words. And we do that both for class management, because we want everybody to read and write a story every week. And also, it's a very good tool to instill discipline and time management in the class. So it's a model that everybody quickly adopts to. And people who have never written stories before find themselves being able to do that week after week. We welcome all levels of writing, from beginners to published authors. And you will find out that in 800 words, you can tell a story that has a beginning, a middle, an end, a story that has conflict, a story that uses dialogue as your primary vehicle to move the plot along. And it's a model that everybody at every level can adopt to. Some class members have formed outside critique groups to kind of jumpstart their writing. So if you want to participate in one of those outside of the class, you're always welcome, and they're always looking for more volunteers to join them. Each week, a new writing assignment is provided, but as a writer, you can write whatever happens to be moving you at the moment. And if you're motivated in a different direction, that's perfectly acceptable to us. This class, by the way, is not recorded, so your work remains your private shared property. This is an example of what an assignment looked like. It's way too small to read, and the intent here isn't for you to read it. It's merely to indicate that each week something like this will arrive in your email. We generally have an objective in each class that focuses on a specific aspect of writing. In this particular assignment, we were focusing on, this is from last semester's writing, it focused on beginnings and ends, the two power positions in a story. You have to hook your reader early, and you have to leave them satisfied at the end of your story. So this assignment asked you to focus on both those aspects in the story that you were going to write. And as you can see in some of the blue items at the bottom, we provide internet references that will talk about different authors' perspectives, different writers' perspectives on how to do that, how to hook your reader in the first 3 sentences, how to leave the reader satisfied at the end of a story, and satisfying that the contract that you make with your audience when you write a story. So it's a learning experience for all of us. You know, the people who are writing, who have been writing for a while and who have even been published, they wouldn't be here if they didn't get something out of it. So everybody, a beginner or an advanced writer, will find themselves experiencing growth as a writer. And that's what we're all about. And we're a very friendly community. We think of ourselves as a family. And so we're asking you to consider joining our writing family. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. That's wonderful. It sounds like a terrific course, and I didn't realize it had been going on for 20 years. That really talks about its popularity. Our next presentation is going to be from Nancy McAfee, who's teaching the history of sculpture, part 1, which I assume means that she'll have a part 2 at least. Nancy, over to you.
Good morning. Yes, I've been teaching at Osher for like about 5 years. I have to say that after listening to other people's course offering descriptions, I want to take like all of them. So I hope that people listening are as enthusiastic as I am. This class is part 1 of the history of sculpture. We're going chronologically. So part 2 will be like in November. This class goes from the very beginnings of sculpture all the way through the Renaissance. The goal is for you to look at sculpture with more educated eyes and a better understanding of why it looks the way it does. Why would somebody do this? We'll start at the very beginning when people make sculpture for the very first time, continue through ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and end up with sculpture from the early Renaissance. So we'll discuss why people carve sculpture. And let's leave it on this one for a minute. Karen, you know, these are figures from Chartres Cathedral, the early Renaissance. And why would somebody do this? What purpose do they serve? What role do these sculptures play in the life of the church, which is where they are? They're attached to a giant cathedral. Would it serve? Can we go back to Rome? Let's just go back to the beginning, and I'll go through that. Great. So this is the Stargazer, and she's one of the very first pieces of sculpture that we know about. You could hold her in your hand. So she's a tiny little piece of sculpture carved from a piece of bone. And that's the very beginning of the history of sculpture. And then the next picture is ancient Greece, where the figures are much larger. They're carved out of marble, and they are very accurate. Their body parts are very accurate. There's a sense of realism here. And, you know, how did that happen? What purpose does this piece of sculpture serve? Let's go on to the next one. This is ancient Rome. The Romans used sculpture to glorify their emperors and their government, and to sort of get people to really understand the power of the Roman Empire. And so this is Marcus Aurelius, who was put in a very prominent place so that whenever you passed him, you would be reminded of the power of the Roman Empire. And finally, right, these are the sculptures on the cathedral at Chartres. And so we will talk about the evolution of sculpture, the carving of sculpture, how you do it, the materials and the tools that you would use to create the pieces that we're going to talk about. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I have to tell you, it is amazing to me that people can look at a piece of marble and turn it into something beautiful.
Exactly.
It's
So
just
we're
incredible.
gonna talk about, like, what do they start with, a piece of marble, and how do they ever get it to be the figure of a human being? So I mean, it's really important to understand that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, our next presentation is going to be from Tim McDonald, Applying Geography to Understanding Our World Today. One of the great things about us having to go to Zoom, this is the glass half full, is that Tim's class always had a waiting list of about 30, 40 people, and even in the big room of 105 people. So everybody gets in now. So that's a wonderful thing to have. Tim?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim McDonald. I've been a member of Osher since 2005, and I've been teaching classes there since 2006. Geography is my passion. That's what I've done for 20 years at MCC, although now I'm kind of retired from MCC. At least I hope so. So I want to give my expertise to Osher at this time. We're going to talk about geography and use it as a framework to talk about some of the issues that are important in the world today. Of course, we can't get to all of them, but we'll do as many as we possibly can. Many of the tools involve mapping, but there's other tools that we use as well. This particular map you're looking at right here is poverty in the world today. And the darker the red color, the more poor the people are in general. And it should be of little surprise to most of you that Africa is the poorest continent. It also, I'm sorry, this is not measuring poverty, although that map would be very similar. This is actually measuring gross national income per capita, which is a measurement of the wealth of the country divided by the number of people who live there. One of the things we'll be discussing is, yes, the United States is dark green, which means it's very, very rich compared to many other countries in the world. But that statistic can be very misleading because we all know that income equality is a problem in our country. And we have a lot of people that are as poor as the people in Latin America. Okay, next slide, please. Our framework for discussing these topics will be what was called spatial thinking skills. Next, please. And spatial thinking, as the name suggests, we're looking at the world as we live in as space, not space in astronomy, but space here on Earth. And there are many skills that we use, and they include conditions, which describe what the place is like Rochester's cold in the wintertime, connections, how we connect to other places, which is why so many cities are located on rivers, because they were highways and still are between one place and another. Regions, which are places that have similar properties, patterns, things that we find that are not random. And there usually is a reason why they are not random, and we call that associations. Like as I alluded to on the previous slide, there's a connection between poverty and GNI. Rich countries tend to have less poverty and those countries that have low GNI have a lot of poverty. Analogies. Do we find situations here And is it unique to Western New York, or do we find them in other places in the world? For example, wine growing regions tend to be found in places that have Mediterranean climates, like the Mediterranean itself, but also California has a similar climate to that. So does Southwest Australia and what else? And Chile in South America. Transitions, how do things change as you move? Oftentimes it's gradual, like if you take a drive out of Rochester, it becomes gradually less urban, more suburban, and then eventually rural. But in many cases, it's very abrupt, like when you cross a border, the situations may completely be different. And finally, hierarchies, how we organize things in steps of small to big or weak to strong. A good example would be how you address a letter. You start with the person's name, then their address, what city they live in, what state they live in, maybe what country they live in. That's a hierarchy. Now, these are important because, next please. We'll concentrate on a different skill each week, but I always want to try to tie it into issues that are going on today, helping us use geography to explain certain factors. Okay, next. For an example, this is an example of regions. And on this map, this is not my particular map. It comes from a friend of mine, Phil Gershmill, who is in Michigan. He's divided North America into 6 regions by using just 5 lines. The orange line is roughly the Rocky Mountains. Let's see, the second line, the light blue line is, if you live north of that, you have less than 100 days of growing season. The next line is the green line, where you have more than 200 days of growing season, which is important because in the South, they grow things that we can't, especially cotton, which has given them a different history than us. And then finally in North America, the dark blue line, which divides the rainy East from the dry West. So if you live west of that, if you're going to grow things, you probably have to use irrigation. Okay. I don't know why that didn't change. Can you click again, please? Okay, these are regions. Next. These are patterns. Notice that the dots, these are dots of cities, 500,000 people or more. And notice that they're not evenly distributed. Like the Western United States is less populated than the Eastern part of the United States. Next. And associations. Notice that these biomes, like deciduous forest, tropical rainforest, etc., they seem to line up really well with those regions I showed you on the first map. Next, please. Other tools we'll be using, like a scattergram. It's a simple graph, and I'm going to encourage people to make their own. And here's one showing, comparing Africa to the Americas, comparing population under 15, children, versus old people like us over the age of 65. And you'll notice that Africa's in blue, and they have very few old people, but a lot of young people. And in the Americas, it's pretty much the opposite. I believe, I've got to check this for sure. I believe the United States is 14. I think Canada's 19. So it seems to be a reverse relationship. The more old people you have, the less young people you have, or vice versa. Next. Of course, we're going to be talking about issues that are important, like democracy under threat. This is a map that comes from Freedom House, a group, the organization that maps and interprets these things. Those places that are relatively democratic are green. Those that are purple are not. And those that are somewhere in between are orange. But that changes. For example, Turkey used to be orange and now it's purple. Next, poverty. I don't have a map for that, but we'll be talking about those issues, income inequality, both in the United States and on the world as a whole. And of course, global climate change is another one. And on the last week in particular, will people tell me in advance what they would like to discuss so I can make some preparation? We can do some other topics as well. Next, I think that's it. Yes.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tim. It sounds very interesting, as usual. Next, we'll be talking, Estelle O'Connell is going to talk about her road trips and recipes. This is a series she's been doing, and this next time she's looking at Canada. Estelle? You'll need to unmute yourself, Estelle. Have we got her on?
Okay, am I on now?
There you are.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to the Osher catalog, this might be considered a fluff course, but there is some learning, and of course, there's a lot of enjoyment. It grew out of a bucket list that my husband and I had of visiting all 50 states, of taking an RV, as you see in the picture, and traveling across the United States to all 50 states, and then also going through Canada. We never got to do that actually, so I am doing that virtually. During the past year, we virtually traveled to the 50 states of America the Beautiful, America the Bountiful, beginning the fall semester at sunrise on Cadillac Mountain in Maine, the first place in the US to witness the daily phenomenon, and then traveling down, let's go back to the first slide, please, and then traveling down the East Coast to the Florida Peninsula. During the winter session, we visited the Gulf states and toured the country's heartland. And in the spring, we explored the western states, ending the session with a luau at sunset on Waikiki Beach. Okay, and then next slide. Just last month in the summer session, we spent a virtual vacation in beautiful Bermuda. Next. In the fall of 2021, we are offering a virtual visit to our neighbors to the north, Canada, the second largest country in the world, comprised of 10 provinces and 3 territories. Next, starting in the, that's the territories and okay. Starting in the capital city of Ottawa, we will cover the characteristics, culture, and cuisine of each of the subdivisions from Prince Edward Island, the smallest, to Nunavut, the largest. Now, with virtual travel, there are no restrictions on resources, time, and money, are no obstacles, and there is no traffic congestion, no crowds or lines. The weather is always ideal, and we leave no carbon footprint. So, from the comfort of your favorite chair, join me this fall in our fall adventure to see the golden prairies of Alberta, the lovely lakes of Manitoba, the picturesque coastlines of New Brunswick, the wilderness of Newfoundland and Labrador, the tundra barrens of the Northwest Territories, let's see, the Arctic archipelago of Nunavut, the iconic landmarks of Ontario, the scenic delights of Prince Edward Island, the dramatic landscapes of La Belle Province, Quebec, the wide open spaces of Saskatchewan, and the fabled territory of the Yukon. At the end of each class, or phase of the trip, we will gather around a bonfire to share our comments and remembrances. This is probably one of my favorite parts because everybody is welcome and invited to share their memories or their experience of where we've been. We also talk about the cuisine of each of the places, so we share special recipes. Our tour starts on Wednesday, September 15th at 1:30 p.m. and I invite you to join me.
Thank you so much, Estelle. It's too bad we're not meeting in person and can't taste those recipes as well as
I know. Well, the good thing is by virtually tasting them, there are no calories involved.
Oh, that's a good one. It's sort of like if no one sees you eat the cake that has no calories.
You got it. You got it.
Anyway, thank you very much. Our next presentation is from Michael Tannenhouse, and it's on Bob Dylan, the Master Thief. Michael?
Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next slide? I apologize that it's so wordy, but it's to keep me on track. So in 2016, Bob Dylan was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. This was a controversial choice in perhaps an unprecedented way. So let's look at people who thought it was a terrible choice, ranging from this is a bad joke, and here's some reasons. Well, he's a great songwriter, but it's not literature. He's just not that good. He can't sing. He's a mediocre musician, and his lyrics don't cut it as poetry. Okay, boomer. You know, one final insult from the boomers, you know, why not say a rapper? And he's not really that original. He takes lines, images, phrases from others. People have argued it borders on plagiarism. You could even imagine him flipping through texts, copying lines, stringing together images to create something that's, you know, somewhat random, and then singing it in this horrible nasal voice. There's increasing convergence on the idea that it was an inspired choice. Many, including the greatest scholars of both Greek and Roman poetry and English language poetry, consider him the genius in the use of English language of the last 50 years, you know, the equal of T.S. Eliot from the first 50 years of the century in originality. Changed ideas of what poetry can be and made us rethink where poetry came from, and a worthy inheritor of the great bardic tradition of poet-singers. Lyric poetry, the lyre, which was the guitar of ancient ages. What does it mean to say created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition? Next slide. So here are some of the rationales for the course for me. First, Dylan is everywhere. Trying to understand his body of work helps us understand American music, culture, history, and aspects of politics in ways that make him essential. You could turn it around. If you want to understand American music, culture, history, and aspects of politics, you could argue it's actually essential to understand Dylan. Secondly, in an ideal world, any educated person should understand why Homer, Shakespeare, Dickinson, Dante, T.S. Eliot are important, whether or not they speak to you. Well, trying to understand any of these people takes one on an intellectual journey. As I hope you'll see, that's also the case for Dylan. And finally, he's alive in creating new work that might be as important as his classic work, yet it's hard to appreciate without context. So for personal reasons, I spent the summer getting a start on 1 to 3 for myself. And in doing so, I've begun a challenging, rewarding intellectual journey. I want to share that with you. We'll learn a lot. So here's the structure of the class. We'll start with Dylan and the Nobel Prize, which has all sorts of intriguing things associated with it. Class 2 will be a brief biography and discography of Dylan from his roots in Hibbing, Minnesota through his various musical periods. We'll focus on the Greenwich Village scene in the late 50s, early 60s, the period covered in Scorsese's documentary, No Direction Home, and creation of Americana to his Rolling Thunder tour. And a lot of what you think you know will turn out to be true, but more will turn out to be distorted, or you'll get a different take on it. Class 3 will sample some of Dylan's most important songs, talking about Dylan as a musician, Dylan as a singer, can he sing? And covers of and by Dylan. So one of the considerations is for people who hate Dylan's voice, or one of his voices, he has at least 6 or 7, it's often interesting to take someone who you think sings really well, listen to them do a Dylan song, then hear the Dylan version afterwards. It's quite eye-opening. Classes 4 and 5 will look at 2 themes that run through his work. One is his remarkable gift, creative use of language, including rhymes that will just blow your head off, and intertextuality, which is a notion that I'm learning about in literature that's changed the way the modern criticism looks at literature and how it's realized in Dylan. Okay, just very briefly to give you a few examples. And how much time do I have left?
You can have a couple minutes if you need it.
Oh, all I need is one. So here are just a few examples. So his famous blowing in the wind. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? Extraordinary song, and actually it had in some ways more influence on the African American community than the kind of white liberal going down south to protest. Here's an example of the kind of images and rhymes he does. This is from a song, Idiot Wind, blowing like a circle around my skull, from the Grand Coulee Dam to the Capitol. Okay, round my skull, the Capitol as rhymes. Notice the shape of the Capitol. Allen Ginsberg, the great beat poet, who was, he'll come up a lot, said to Dylan, you know, that's a remarkable image. Dylan sort of smiled and said, you got it, did you? Or late Dylan, just to show the kind of juxtaposition he can do in Beauty of Lines. There's an evening haze settling over the town, starlight by the edge of the creek, you know, so sentimental kind of lines, juxtaposed with the buying power of the proletariat's gone down, money's getting shallow and weak. You know, you'll see this all the time in late Dylan, you know, and then here's a great rhyme I like, continues. It's a new path that we trod. They say low wages are reality if we want to compete abroad. Get your head around those rhymes. There are literally hundreds of expressions that Dylan has introduced into our language or popularized. He not busy being born is busy dying. You don't need a weatherman to know the way the wind blows. Money doesn't talk, it swears. Those are from 2 Dylan songs. And then the final, this is a verse from a Dylan song that it's in the either Oxford or Cambridge Compendium of Poetry. Praise be to Nero's Neptune, the Titanic sails at dawn, everyone shouting, what side are you on? And Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot fighting in the captain's tower. Know what that refers to? Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot engaged in this epic battle for who would inherit the captain's legacy. The captain is Walt Whitman. And then you have these seemingly random, this is very young Dylan, and he changes views on T.S. Eliot, but then you end up with this, well, calypso singers laugh at them and fishermen hold flowers and so on. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from images and so on from one of T.S. Eliot's first great poems, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And so it's a case of the deeper you go, the more you see, particularly in the late Dylan. So it's been an interesting journey, and I hope you join me on it. 5 classes is too few, but it's a way of getting started. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It sounds like a very interesting course and kind of, you know, very modern. And there was a discussion in the New York Times this week about different songs, and this would really fit into some of the comments people were making, and, you know, music and its relation even decades after songs were written to current times. Anyway, thank you very much. That sounds great. Our next presentation is Jack Callahan, and he's going to talk, give a course on Irish culture and literature. Jack?
Good day, everyone. I thought I'd like to just introduce the Irish literature course by giving you a brief background. When I joined Osher, known as the Athenaeum at that time in 2001. It was a course that was rather informal with a English teacher, Mary McNamara, and Bill McGeary being facilitators. And it was fundamentally a process of, this is a 1,085-page book anthology of Irish fiction edited by Colm Toibin, a contemporary Irish writer. And the format of the class was we would all read and then comment and everything. Well, since then, I've found, for not only pragmatic reasons, but reasons of class participation and suggestion, that a new format works better, that being where we forward I believe it's a PDF to each class participant several days before, that PDF containing a story, a written short story or piece of Irish literature. And then at the time of the class get together, we discuss it at length. The format kind of the metamorphosis of it kind of occurred over some years. I started the course in 2009. This next session in August will be, September, excuse me, will be the 267th session. In addition to the PDF, which we will talk, and I just referred to, we will have a number of videos regarding authors, history, biographical material, travel. The Great Course agenda offers two series, the Irish Identity and Celtic World, which time to time I refer to their 30-minute segments. The most recent development is within the class, there have been volunteers, Estelle here who just presented being one, who have individually substituted their experience of an Irish nature, necessarily involving culture and or literature. And that's added a lot to it. We have another member whose family lives in Ireland yet, and by the virtues of Zoom, we were connected up on that basis. So we're really growing in format, and the course we offer is always open to suggestion as to a particular literary piece and or format. Just to say a few more words as to what you might expect to have as included. I have some tapes of an Irish comedian, Hal Roach, and from time to time we listen to snippets of that. They're quite entertaining and proved to be very, very helpful in sometimes a very serious venue, that being the address of Irish authors. It's pretty much like William B. Yeats says, being Irish, he had an abiding sense of tragedy, which sustained him through temporary periods of joy. So we like to have a little levity, and Hal Roach has provided, along with a couple other contemporary writers, one of whom is Patrick O'Connor, he's a Shanachie, which means in Gaelic a storyteller, the people who comprise the oral tradition. As the course catalog presents, William B. Yeats, George B. Shaw, Samuel Beckett, and Seamus Heaney will also be referred to. I would conclude by saying that I'm going to really concentrate this term on some of the women Irish literary figures, one contemporary, Edna O'Brien, yet living here in England, as a matter of fact, Mary Levin, who has passed on, and Colm Toibin, who has written an enormous amount of material, which is something I'd like to present to all of you. Notwithstanding the Nobel Prize winners, as I stated, Yeats, Shaw, Beckett, and O. Henry, we'll try to include them peripherally. It was, of course, Joyce that was more or less continued as a named figure in the Irish literary agenda. And although he hasn't won a Nobel Prize, Samuel Beckett an avowed socialist when he won the Nobel Prize of some significant sum of money, close to $1 million at that time, said that Joyce should have got it because he would have known how to spend it. So we look forward to seeing all of you.
That sounds like it's gonna be a fun course. Thank you very much, Jack. Okay, next we have Peter Luce, who is giving a course on body and soul, the tenor saxophone and jazz. Peter?
Hi, thank you, Karen. Good morning, everybody. This course would be the first of a multi-part survey of the history of the tenor saxophone and jazz. The tenor saxophone has produced more jazz talent than any other instrument, with the single exception of the piano. The popularity of the instrument for both musicians and listeners is the instrument's ability to capture the sound and nuance of the human voice. In the history of jazz, there have been four major innovators: Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Sonny Rollins, and John Coltrane. This course will explore those innovators, and in so doing, it will explore artistic innovation, artistic influence. How is it that a small number of musicians can take their music in a totally different direction? But while emphasizing the innovators, I'm also going to take a look at the followers, followers in quotes. Followers can be blatant imitators, and can range from blatant imitators through those who take the basic elements of an innovator's style and create a personal voice unique to themselves. And of course, obviously, we'll follow the latter. Coleman Hawkins and Lester Young created whole schools of tenor saxophone playing. We're going to begin the course with a very brief history of the saxophone, a kind of a strange instrument combining elements of woodwinds and brass, invented in the 1840s by a Belgian named Adolphe Sax. And he didn't invent just one instrument, he invented 8. The saxophone family has 8 instruments, ranging from a very, very tiny 12-inch soprano saxophone at one end to a gargantuan contrabass saxophone at the other, which is 6 feet and 4 inches long and weighs 45 pounds. Of those 8 saxophones, 4 are commonly used in jazz today: the soprano, the alto, the tenor, and the baritone. We're going to begin with the first great innovator, Coleman Hawkins, born 1904, died 1969. He's referred to as the father of the tenor saxophone. He took what was at the time essentially a novelty instrument used in vaudeville and marching bands and turns it into a serious instrument capable of a wide range of expression in the jazz idiom. Through comparative recordings, we will hear a remarkable transition from a very primitive soloist with the French Henderson Band in 1924 to a very polished soloist a mere 5 years later. We're going to follow the arc of Coleman Hawkins' recording career over the next 30 years. And included in those recordings is his masterpiece, a version of Body and Soul that he recorded in October of 1939. This is one of the most notable recordings in jazz history, and one which came to define Coleman Hawkins over his long career. Following a survey of his recordings, we will turn to tenor players who were younger than Coleman Hawkins, an average of 9 years younger, but who were strongly influenced by him. These young players took the basic elements of the Hawkins style, but fashioned their own unique approach. Including will be the well-known Ben Webster, the lesser-known Chu Berry, and Herschel Evans. Lesser known because he's a very fine artist, died very young. And then we're going to end that portion of the course with a kind of a subgenre of the Coleman Hawkins school that historians refer to as the Texas tenors. Basically, a group of tenors, Buddy Tate, Illinois Jacquette, Arnett Cobb, who took the Coleman style and really infused it with a heavy dose of the blues, playing very gritty, soulful, that added a Southwestern United States blues flavor to Coleman Hawkins. That's the first segment of the course. And I'm then going to move on to Lester Young and basically take the same approach, delve into Lester Young's style and recordings, and then take a look at his influences, and then move on from there. So that's the course. Are there any questions? If not, Karen, back to you.
All right, thank you, Peter. We're going to take a break here just in case anybody has any questions for any of the preceding presenters. Before you kind of forget what you wanted to ask, let's see if anybody has any questions, and you can use the, I guess it's, where do we go to raise our hand these days?
Under reactions.
Under reactions, okay. I thought so, but I was not quite sure. So does anybody have a question at this time?
I do not see any hands.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on then. Okay, we're going to next get a talk about our one session courses. These are one-time courses. They happen one day on Mondays. And let me toss this over and we can learn what's coming up.
Okay, everybody. Debbie Huff here. So I'm going to give you just a really quick overview of our one sessions. One sessions are one of our great ongoing course offerings where you can learn a lot about a wide variety of subjects in just 90 minutes every Monday at 11:15. The term kicks off on September 11th with looking at the growth of the world's civilization through its evolving cities. Based on the book Metropolis. It's presented by Chris Ryan and myself, and we're going to develop this into a full 10-week course for the winter term. The next week, quite a change, Jim Scott is going to explain the importance of the Articles of the Confederation. They don't get enough attention. They were written a full decade before our Constitution. And so he's going to he'll clear a lot of our questions about that. Then we have the excitement of traveling to South Africa with Victor Polacek. Many of you who have been long-term members have seen Victor's sort of travel shows through the years. He's done them regularly. He enjoys our World Travelers Indeed. And this is him talking about South Africa, and they go throughout South Africa and of course do a safari at the end. Then we get serious again with Gary Mitchell, who's a West Point graduate, is going to talk about the history of the early resistance of the United States Army against rewarding of medals and how that attitude changed through our 250-year history. It's something most of us don't know about. Then we have Columbus Day. What a great day to talk about Christopher Columbus. And so that's what Tom Lathrop is going to do. He's going to take a look at and ask the question, Christopher Columbus, hero or villain? October 18th, Dick Scott and Roger Van Wormer are going to do a fascinating talk about, they're going to take us to the depths of the Atlantic in search of an 1857 shipwreck known as the Ship of Gold. It went down off the coast of South Carolina, and it was carrying $100 million in gold from the California gold fields. So they call it Ship of Gold, lost, found, and lost again. This is going to be wonderful. Then we move to art. Chris Ryan is going to do the life and times of Bertha Morrison, who fought to make her way as a woman in the male-dominated impressionistic movement in Paris in the 1870s. Then Michelle Turner is going to give the second of her talks on the great art collectors. Last spring, she did women collectors. This time she's going to do men collectors and focus on men from the Medicis to today. She's going to explain the hows and whys. Finally, I want to introduce Doug Stoll to you. He's our second lecturer, Osher lecturer, who's coming in remotely from the DC area. He's going to do two talks. One, what in the world is going on? And it's going to look at the standings, US standings in world statistics. He's the former marketing director of Xerox, and has been leading Osher OLLI courses around the country since 2018. He's an authority on polling. And so that's the first class. And the second, have you checked your personality today? That's one that's going to be just for fun, but I'm glad to be able to introduce him. So those are our one sessions. You can see the breadth of what we're doing, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And I apologize because I had a senior moment and your name wouldn't come to me. So I'm sorry I didn't introduce you by name. All right, our next presentation is from Nita, and it's regarding the Thursday Fowler Lecture Series. Nita?
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm so excited to always be able to tell our Fowler program, because it is another one of our unique offerings where we bring in outside speakers, not Osher members, to talk to our organization. So it was named after Marge Fowler, and I don't know exactly when it was that she started this or when it went on, continued on at the request of her family. But anyway, and we hold them every term except for the summer. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over each one of the ones that we have scheduled. Again, they're Thursdays at 12:15 to 1:30. You do not have to register for these. The week before the talk, a flyer goes out with details about the speakers and the topics, and the link is in that as well. So we're going to start out with our own Vanessa J. Herman, who is our liaison from Osher back to RIT. And so it really is the Government and Community Relations Department, and Osher really is the perfect partnership, and she's going to expand on that. She has some great visions for how Osher can strengthen its relationship with RIT. Our next one is Judge William Taylor. He's going to talk about COVID-19 and justice and COVID's impact on the judicial system. Coincidentally, one of our members passed away, long-term course leader, Bob Vakosik. And Judge Taylor gave his eulogy, and it was actually very wonderful. So our next one is Ingrid Stanlis. She was the search committee chair for finding the replacement for Ward Stair for the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. So how in the world do you go about finding a maestro? Joe Klein has been a very active member in the Rochester community. He was founder of Klein Steel, but he also has run for political offices and has a great interest in the Rochester City School District. So he's going to give a talk on Can We Save the Rochester Schools? This is a very interesting topic next, the glaring omissions, how population growth is omitted from the climate conversation. Joe Seeger used to be, the organization used to be called Zero Population Growth. So this is going to be a very interesting discussion. Next slide, please. Gwen Clifton, we tried to do recently one session on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so this time we have Gwen Clifton speaking, racism and equality in the greater Rochester community. And then we have a lot of people that are greatly interested in music, Peter Luce's courses, Victor Polshek's courses are always well attended. And so we have Paul Hoffman from the Eastman School who's going to do a talk on what do composers do. And then our next topic, Mary Ellen Mercant. This is a really timely conversation, I think. Going natural, the highlights of green burial. We've never done anything like this before, I'm pretty certain. So we'll see how well attended it is. And of course, I judge our success by how well our attendance is. So please attend. We'd like to have a good audience for our guest speakers. The next one happens to fall on November 11th, which is Veterans Day. So we were able to get Laura Stradley, who is the director of the Veterans Outreach Center. And she's going to do a talk on women in the military. What's different now? We know there's been a lot of emphasis on some of the treatment of women in the military. So that should be a very outstanding talk. And then we're going to do Dr. Karen Wirtz-Kozak. Oh, my aching back. She actually has applied for a National Science Foundation grant. She's an RIT professor. And so there's a lot of interesting information that she will be telling us as well. I want to thank my committee because they came up with all these wonderful ideas. And so that would be Jim Hooper, Marjorie Focaracho and Mike Schnittman. They really do a great job of coming up with ideas. I want to show you, we did a survey in the fall, no, in the spring, and these are the popular topics. So we tried very hard by our members' own interest, those that responded to the survey. And so we tried very hard to do the topics that, you know, seem to fall to the top of this. However, some of the ones you may not have interest in can also seemingly also can have very good attendance, and the military topics have also been well attended, even though it doesn't seem to fall to the top of our interest levels. And then the next slide is, the Fodler lectures are always open to guests. Because we're on Zoom, there's no limit on the number of people that we can have. So invite people, invite your friends to attend these lectures. And we're always looking for new ideas, new members, because one of the caveats that I live by is service builds community. You get much more invested in our Osher community if you join a committee. So we would welcome you in that. So if you wish to do that, please just contact me by emailing me at nmgbali@aol.com. And I would look forward to having your suggestions and or joining our committee. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nita. It sounds very interesting, and a gamut of all sorts of courses or presentations that are going to be amazing.
Thank you.
And you work so hard on that, and so I hope you get a lot of attendance on these. Next, we're going to talk about the special interest groups known as SIGs. We're going to hear from Terry, and one of the things I'll personally mention is, although I'm on her list for Pearls of Wisdom, I haven't learned to do it yet, but I enjoy her emails because they come with lots of funny comics and cartoons and stuff. So
thank you
for that. Thanks, Terry. Go ahead.
Well, just come and learn. Well, it's hard to teach you on Zoom, but we can try.
Yeah.
My name is Terry Hurley. I'm sort of a head of special interest groups. Special interest groups are interests that we have that aren't not learning experiences, but they are. They really are. But we can't meet during class hours, so we meet at other hours. There's the travel. People share their travels. There's the Apple, Mac, iPhone, iPad, which, oh, good grief, helps us so much. Those of us that have Mac products and don't know what we're doing. Pearls of Wisdom, that's mine. We knitters, we have needlecraft, we have a beater, we have needlepoint. We get together and on Zoom now, which is nice, from the comfort of your own chair. And we knit and talk a lot. And then when we get off, we take out what we knitted because we were talking so much. We made mistakes. But that's the way it is with knitting. Photography, people share their pictures. And the walking group, they go out for a different area, usually every week, and walk. I don't know what they're doing in the heat. Now, all these will be, if you want more information, all of them will be, all the meeting times and stuff will be in the newsletter that you will get every month. And please join them. We have a good time. And the person that fixed what I sent and put it into the PowerPoint, thank you so very much.
I got your back, Terry. No problem.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I just wanted to point out quickly that due to some in-person classes being canceled on Wednesday mornings, that is an open time slot, 9:30 to 11 for SIGs and other meetings to take place now.
Yeah, I know the Pearls of Wisdom, we've been meeting on Thursdays through the summer because there's no classes, but we usually meet on Fridays because there's no classes this coming term. And we kind of change it every term depending on the classes, and so do the other. Or they meet after classes at 3:30. But that's it. Join one. We have a great time.
Thank you so much, Terry. I just want to make a comment about the special interest groups. Any member can form a special interest group. And in fact, that walking group was started by someone who had just joined. I believe her last name is Moore. I haven't met her personally yet.
You do, right. Thank you.
Yeah, so you know, if there's something, whether it's a gardening or any other topic, you could start a special interest group and like-minded people will join you, and it's a great time to build a community of people you enjoy spending time with.
What a
So,
great idea. I should start a gardening one and have them come work in my garden.
okay, Terry, can I supervise it rather than do the work?
No, I want people to work.
They can come to my house next.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
thank you. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about special events because Osher is more than-
Karen?
We have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Estelle?
Yes, I wanted to ask, I really enjoyed the wine socials in the past, the Zoom wine socials last year. And I was wondering, do they fall under a special interest group or is that
Oh,
the
they're in social
Alcoholics
events.
Anonymous group?
Yep.
They are a social event.
Yes.
And I
Okay.
apologize on this slide. I did forget to take out my note to myself to add picnic information. So Karen, do you want to go over the picnic information? We still do plan on having the picnic because it is, although we have a lodge at Legion Ire Park, there are a lot of outdoor tables. So just mask accordingly and we should be able to go safely.
Okay, I don't have it memorized what the date is. Jane's with us if you don't know.
September 10th.
I can help you if you want.
Yeah, Jane, go ahead.
Okay, we're having it on Friday, September 10th. And it's going to be the Friday before we start classes. And we're going to meet at 3:30 and have an hour of getting back together and chatting and all. And then at 4:30, our band is going to start. And they're called, we had a cancellation because of illness of our other band. And so we've gotten a wonderful new band. We're so lucky. Linda Ungerer found them. They're called the Old Hippies Music. And she said they're fantastic. And we want to do 50s, 60s, 70s music and the kind of music that's going to get everybody singing along and dancing. So we're really going to celebrate getting back together again after all this time. And then we're going to have a wonderful buffet, an Italian buffet. And it's from Papa Joe's on the west side. Anyway, they're supposed to be wonderful. And we'll have that buffet and then we'll have music for 2 hours and we'll end at about 7 o'clock. And the venue is in East Rochester. It's at the Legion Ire Park. And it's in the Quincy Lodge, which holds 120 people. It's a beautiful, with lots of windows, big, spacious place with regular tables and chairs, not picnic tables. And it's got, we can open it up to the patio and that'll be shaded. And I think we ought to have, it ought to be a fantastic time.
There are only 25 spots left.
Okay, thank you for checking and thank you, Jane. Jane has worked so hard on this and everybody, we've missed each other, one another. So I urge you, if you're joining or if you're a member already, get there and get one of those 25 slots. It's going to be so nice to actually meet face to face. So thank you for all your hard work, Jane.
And it's free. It's free.
It's free.
It's
Yeah.
free. And if we don't get enough people, I think, what didn't we say on September 1st, we might open it up to spouses too, or?
Yes, people have been putting in guest requests and we've been adding those people to the wait list in case there is space.
Okay.
All right, thanks. All right, so that kind of ties us in. Osher is much more than just the classes that we give. We have a lot of special events. It's been a little curtailed due to COVID, but we have high quality entertainment like the Poets of Piano, the Ying Quartet, and Push Physical Theater in the past, several times a year. And this is also free of charge. And, you know, I've attended a number of these over in Todmart Plaza. I think it's the Downstairs Cafe is what it's called.
The Downstairs Cabaret has changed to a different name, but it is still in Winton Place.
Right. Okay, so anyway, I think they use, oh yeah, went in place now. But they're fun. You get to, you can bring a guest usually, and there's great food, there's beverages, including, wine if you want it, and they're wonderful. And so it'll be nice when things get back to where we can start holding those in person.
I do have
question. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I do have some late breaking news. In the spring, we will hopefully, fingers crossed, have an in-person arts and lectures event called Creative Collision. It's going to be a collaboration between the Ying Quartet and Push Physical Theater. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
And there's a question
from Ralph.
Ralph?
Yes, good morning. Jane, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to ask you a question. Is the Galapagos trip a special event, and can you give us an update on that?
Maybe I can address that.
I can talk. Well, it was kind of I don't know whether you call it a special event, but it was an idea I had. It came kind of from the travel SIG. But just put out to anybody, any of the membership, anybody who wanted to go to the Galapagos, and I would arrange it. And so I worked together with a group in Montana, and we hired a whole boat, and in 1.5 days, the boat was full. So once I put the email out, and some people who saw it too late missed out, unfortunately. But we have 16 people. We're leaving the end of January, and we're going over there and spending 8 days on a boat in the Galapagos, traveling to 11 different islands. And so we're hoping the course this fall is also on Galapagos, is great for anybody, people who are attending as well as anybody else, but it'll give you a good preview to what Galapagos has to offer.
Okay, can we go back?
I'm going to allow Tom Lowe to talk because I know he has to leave, and then we'll back up and do summer seminar stuff.
Excellent, thank you, Mary. Tom? Tom was going to talk. Are you there, Tom?
Yes,
Yeah.
now I am there. I had to unmute. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit about volunteerism, and as part of that, Tom was going to talk a little more in depth about course leaders. So because he needs to leave, we're going to jump to him and then backtrack a little. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, I hope it's not backtracking too much, but some of you, there's some folks thinking of joining us, are thinking about joining Osher, and I hope you do. All of us are thinking about what courses to take this fall, and there's an embarrassment of riches. We've seen how many are being offered. But while you're thinking, I'd like you to also think about something more. Osher needs you. Think about leading a class at Osher. The breadth and range and the variety of topics of our academically oriented courses are the major reason that people come to Osher and stay at Osher. And it sounds formidable, but it really is not. You do not have to have been a teacher in your past life in order to lead an Osher course. I am not. Yet I have led more than 25 courses over the 11 years I've been with Osher. You do not have to be an expert in your subject before you start. All you need is a passion for your subject matter and a willingness to share your research. A real benefit of leading a class is that you learn so much more about your subject, both from your research and from the byplay with the folks in your course. That's been my big motive in exploring thinkers and pieces of literature that I had always meant to read. This gives me a chance to read it in depth and then share it with somebody else and have them point out things that I've missed entirely. It's a great way to just really learn a subject, and a subject that may have nothing to do with your professional training. You don't have to lead a course from behind a podium. We've had discussion groups, group presentations, great courses, CD classes. There's all sorts of formats, so you don't have to sit at your Zoom screen and talk into the screen. There's other ways to do it. You don't have to fit your course into just a one size organization, a rigid time slot. They can be a 1 session course. It can be a 5-week course, a 10-week course. Some semesters we're able to offer 11 or 12 weeks. It can be an hour and a half long. It can be 2 hours long. It can work. You can make a format work. And most important, you don't have to do all this planning, all this thinking all on your own. We have a course offerings committee of experienced course leaders that can work with you to do things like brainstorm potential classes, help you prepare a syllabus, help you with the technical end of whether you use a PowerPoint or videos or whatever, help you find reference materials, help you find a course leader perhaps. And to help you even further, this we'll be offering a class on October 6th at 10 a.m., a specific, 1 session class, let's call it, on how to lead a course at Osher. So that'd be October 6th at 10. That'll be in the calendar, and you'll be hearing more about it. So we're here as a resource. I'm available. Deb Huff leads the course offerings committee, and she and her members are also available. Do think about leading a course. It's really it's the best part of my own experience here at Osher. So
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Karen. Thanks to everybody.
We do have a question from Bob Schlosky before we move on to summer seminar, and I'm wondering if Tim McDonough will be able to speak on that in just a moment. So go ahead, Bob Schlosky.
Okay, thank you. 2 things. First of all, I'd like to say kudos and, great appreciation for all the Osher staff and everybody involved that pivoted so quickly for the fall semester. That was great. Second of all, anybody have the date yet for the winter courses, the deadline you'd have to submit the proposal by?
Yes, that we pushed out to October, sorry for my dog, 25th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you. We're going to go back to talking about the summer seminar and lectures trips. And I'm going to turn this over to Tim, who has recently taken on the planning for next year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get to go again. Tim?
Thank you. Yes, our committee met at Sharon Garlick's house back in early August. And we have got a kind of a tentative schedule what we want to do. Before I give you that, though, I should mention that we call it summer seminar because usually on Tuesdays, we have a lecture or usually 2 lectures talking about the background of the trips that we're going to be doing on Thursday, 2 days later. We do 4 trips, and next summer we're tentatively going to go to Corning in late June, to go to the Rockwell Museum, have lunch, and then go to the Corning Museum of Glass in the afternoon. In early July, probably the week after the 4th, will be the Shaw Festival in Niagara on the Lake. course, that is definitely contingent on whether the border is open. They keep delaying it, but we'll see. They are going to be showing Gypsy, which is what we were going to do last year. But of course, we couldn't because you couldn't cross the border. Then in later July, Bob and Dawn Auerlein are going to be leading us to Seneca Lake to take a boat tour out of Watkins Glen and a winery afterwards. And then finally in August, we're going to Buffalo. Nancy Uppendell is going to be responsible for that. Not sure exactly where she wants to go yet, but we'll be discussing that next month. We are going to be meeting, I guess, virtually on September 21st. We are always looking for new members to help with the trips. So if you're interested, please contact me. And if you don't have my email, I'm sure the office can give it to you. We'd love to have you join us. And hopefully we'll be able to do the trips in the summer. Anything else we need to know?
Anybody have any questions about the summer trips? Okay, we'll move on. I want to talk a little bit about volunteerism. It's really the engine that drives Osher. Osher courses, the direction of it is all set by members in accordance with our bylaws and RIT policies. RIT tends to have a very hands-off approach to us, which gives us a lot of flexibility. And so if you join the organization in things like, if you become a part of the committee or, the executive committee, et cetera, you have a chance to influence what we're doing. And, that's a good thing. There are many, many volunteering opportunities. It can be something as simple as you decide to host a wine social. The ones that we had in the past were, different people. They got their favorite wine and they researched it a little if they didn't already know, and got together with people on Osher, and it was fun. So it could be something as major as becoming a vice chair, or something underneath it where you're working on some of the courses and outreach programs, etc. So, what is in it for me? You get a sense of self-satisfaction like no other. And, I can give you a personal testimonial. It may not seem that way because I have a tendency that if I have a role to play, I'm going to do it, right? And I have a responsibility. So I'm really an introvert. It would be very easy for me. I didn't have as much difficulty over COVID being locked down because that's okay with me. I for a lot of reasons, am very okay with doing things just on my own, single type things. But having volunteered for this position at Osher is really what kept me sane over this past year. It truly has, because I've remained connected, and because I had a responsibility, I had to remain connected. And I've met so many wonderful, wonderful people. I'm more social now than I was pre-COVID, and so I encourage people to think about that, because it keeps you involved. You get self-satisfaction from accomplishments and from making people happy. Course leaders, think of the satisfaction they get sharing the knowledge that they either research or know from their walk of life. Regarding course leaders, my father was 89 years old last winter term, conducted his first course at Osher. You're never too old. And, and he didn't do it on his own. It's a daunting task. He didn't know PowerPoint. And there's a shout out to Jane, who has talked to us this time. And Jane ended up being a co-presenter with Dad, and she helped him through. And that's, the next bullet, which is you receive support from the staff and other members to a degree that you wouldn't know. So don't ever let something like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I have no experience in that, hold you back. If you have an interest, we got somebody that will support you. Volunteering opportunities include running a social event, creating a new SIG, becoming a tech wizard. That sounds like, oh, I need to know a lot about computers, but we have training and we have a lot of people that will teach you, and it's not really all that big a deal on Zoom. You know, we've kind of gone through the growing pains, so we know what we're doing. And even when you start as a tech wizard and you maybe are, you know, being the wizard for a particular class, they don't just throw you out there by yourself. There's an experienced person with you to make sure you're comfortable and guide you through that. So don't be afraid to say, well, I don't know if I can do that. You can do it because we've got the help. Again, you could become a committee member. The other thing is that in addition to personal help through the staff and through other members, there is a lot of help on the website, including how to do PowerPoint presentations and that kind of thing. So again, the support is there. And Mary wants me to move on, which is good. We have questions. I can see there's some things in chat. Mary, do you want to tell us who gets to ask or read a comment? Or
there were some comments. We also thought about, I have a fire alarm or a bird pretending to be a fire alarm right now. We also thought about tea tastings, beer tastings for those members who are not wine lovers. Cheese tastings might be good for a social event. The world is our oyster as far as choices go. And Estelle, that was from Nita. Estelle says Osher Zoom classes were my salvation during COVID as well.
Thank you, Estelle. Any questions then? The other thing I wanted to kind of bring up is volunteerism. And again, Jane in the Galapagos trip, technically that's not an Osher special event because Osher's not a travel agency. That's really not our mission, but it's a vehicle. And so, you know, Jane came up with the idea and she was able to offer it to members, and within less than 2 days, every slot was filled. And it was an advantage for people because you're getting to go with people you know, or, you know, will get to know. She's saving a ton of money by booking an entire, I think she's saying at least $500-600 per person by doing this. So this is an outside of the box thinking, and we encourage it, and it worked out. And, you know, my only wish is I could be going on the trip, and I know a lot of other people do. So that's just something else that I wanted to mention, is that, you know, if there's something that you think, oh, well, what could we do? Chances are we can figure out how to make it happen. And so, you know, please, you know, volunteerism is so important to this organization. And it really, thank you, Estelle, because I think it's helped so many people. And like I said, I'm more social on Zoom than I was prior to Zoom. So it's great. Okay, now we're going to get to the nitty gritty about membership levels and benefits. I mean, there are details on the website. If new people have questions, we can certainly, you know, answer them for you. The big difference is we have $100 trial membership for 1 quarter, which is for somebody who's not sure that they really are able to do this, or, you know, oh, what's it going to be like? It gives you a chance to try it at a very, very low rate. Again, you could take as many courses as you want. You could participate in all the social events. You know, that's a bargain. But if you go to full membership, and your trial membership can be deducted from the cost of full membership, you get the following list of university benefits. If you think about it, when you're a full member, you know, and if you're someone who goes to our BJ's warehouse, you get a free membership. So what does that save you? It's probably at least $45 a year, just that in there. So think of that as a savings to deduct from your membership fees. Osher memberships make fantastic gifts, whether you know, it's for, you know, yourself, but also someone in your family, someone that you know. I mean, we don't need more stuff. Most of us our age are looking to downsize. We're looking to pass things down to the next generation and not get, who needs more socks or a pair of pajamas at, you know, Christmas? But an Osher gift really gives, and it helps people, again, with learning, staying involved, keeping your mind active. So, you know, certainly it's something to consider, especially as we're coming up on the holiday time. The other thing I'd like to mention about the gifting is now that we're on Zoom, and we really haven't talked about it, is that you could be anywhere and join us. I mean, we have a member that is it Ethiopia or Nigeria?
Nigeria.
And, you know, we have people from all over the United States. So you don't have, that's the nice thing again about Zoom, is you don't have to be local enough to drive to the facility. So, you know, please think about that and expand it outside your thoughts for the Rochester area. Do you know do you have friends? Do you have acquaintances? Do you know some kids looking to, what do I give, you know, mom and dad or grandma and grandpa for the holidays? You've got a solution, and it's better than stuff. So anyway, join today. You can use the join or the renew now on the website, or you can email the Osher staff at osher.info@rit.edu. The course registration is opening up on Tuesday at 10 a.m. So we hope that, you know, you'll join us. And let me just ask if there are any last minute questions before we wrap up.
I don't see anything.
Okay, there was, I think, okay.
There wasn't any more chat that was to me, so.
Okay, great. So I really want to thank everyone who came today to present about, you know, their courses and, you know, the Fodlers, one session, SIGs, etc. I really do appreciate your time, and I truly feel that hearing from you directly is really good for the people who are interested. So I do appreciate that. I want to thank Mary, who always works so hard, and she did all the slides and ran the slide presentations. And, you know, I submitted a slide to her, and she's so good at editing. She condensed it, and you know, it's like, she's terrific. So we have a great staff. And that was the one thing I wanted to mention about the organization. Our membership dues are what pays for our staff. And that's where they go towards, and they're fantastic. They work so hard. And then we get funding through RIT, through the Osher and other grants. That's what drives this organization. That leads back to volunteerism. This is our organization. Join, participate, enjoy. It's great.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thanks to all of you for all the work that you put into our program.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions, please submit them. And I can be reached at kea.osher@gmail.com if anybody wants to talk to me personally. Okay. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.